Let's pray. Father, I thank you for this time. I thank you for life in my body, God, and I thank you for all the meditations in my heart, in the hospital and in my office and outside, and all the times that I prayed, God, and just asked you, just speak to my heart. Father, I pray that you would speak to somebody's heart under the sound of my voice, and that I would clearly be able to communicate a message that has been inside of me for quite some time, that is just beginning to come out. I cooperate with your spirit. I cooperate with the people here. I cooperate with the Holy Ghost, and I have no fear. All those in agreement said, amen. Amen. Take your seats. Yesterday, my wife and I, we were in the house, and it was just quiet. And I said, I am enjoying just being in a quiet house. But what was more important was that I was enjoying having a quiet mind. And what I mean by a quiet mind is that most pastors quit ministry and they don't return. If you Google and look up the research for pastors, once they have encountered human energy and human life and all that kind of stuff, they don't return because it does a number on their spirits. And one of the things that Jill and I have, and it's taken us 2 years now just to recovering. We're just recovering or getting to a point where we have our own mind about ourselves. And I am a dreamer, and the locations, the look of the locations, and all the things that we've done and I've accomplished over the last 25 years is a direct result of dreaming and believing God. And as we've noticed, God will take you through several trials and take you through some of the most severe trials one can understand. And I'm not going to bore you with all my trials because you've got your own trials. But one of the trials were an ongoing trial has been trying to get my relationship with my wife in order, my relationship with ministry in order, my relationship with money and my mind and all these different things. When you have been traumatized or you've been through some severe trauma, and we know trauma is seeing someone go through something, fearing death, seeing someone die, severe pressure to your soul. It's called PTSD. And when you go through that, it becomes hard. You have to work harder to be normal. And for 25 years, I look back and I don't know how I was able to make some of the things that I've been able to do or make it through, or we as a ministry. And the thing that God was having me to deal with was relationships. And one of the things that I spent a good deal of my life on, at least 14 years with a group of people, was I wanted to teach about relationships. And I had a faulty belief that I could teach them about relationships, teach you, and then you would get it, and then you would grow, and then things would change. But that was faulty. And the reason that was faulty was that I was not aware of human nature and that everybody has their own story as they deal with something. But because my number one value is loyalty, and sometimes you can be loyal to a fault, I remain loyal. So I followed a model of ministry. And that motto of ministry said, be everything to all men to save some. But I missed out a very key piece, and that was you have to do it for those who are wanting to do the will of the Lord. And so I had to make a change. And I realized that what was more important at this point was my relationship with God and not the relationship with the church. And Zach, I had to choose. You know, if you just look at a myriad of the activities that have been done in the last 25 years of this ministry and just what I've done, I am never without ideas and some kind of ingenuity to do the next thing. But I made a decision, and you've heard me say these over the last year, I made a conscious decision. I'm not going to focus on church growth. I'm not going to focus on any of that. I am just going to focus on relationship. First and foremost, me. And that meant that there was going to be some type of fallout from that. And I did not understand what the fallout was going to be. I knew that I would lose and that we would lose people and, quite a few things. But what was more important to me is that I had lost myself. I had a romantic relationship with the church, and which was more of a fantasy relationship than it was an actual relationship. And so I'll be comparing my relationship with ministry and also telling this story. Hopefully, that's it, it's working out. Hopefully you can get it. It's working now. So today, we're going to be talking about your relationship with your mother, friends, or whatever, because at somewhere, now, and I want you to get this, if I am in a relationship with you, I try really hard to improve that relationship. I try really hard because I believe in relationship. And I pushed really hard to make this happen. And as I was writing this morning, I said, well, let me just tell a story of this couple, true story. And that was, they loved each other. Now, you can apply this principle to your son, your husband, your daughter, friends, or whatever. They loved each other. And they had a strategy. They had the romantic phase of their relationship. And I remember seeing them, and they were in love. And their goal was to get rid of the problems in their relationship, get rid of a whole bunch of the arguments and the conflict that they was going through. And thus, they believed that this struggle that they were having was going to stop. Both of them often walked away disappointed in the relationship. And they walked away disappointed because they, like most of us, fall in love, but there are skills that you have to have in relationships to keep it going. And their problem was only one of them was fully committed, but they were committed to the struggle. Meaning they were committed to staying in a bunch of negativity and committed to staying in the way this relationship was. And that was their inability to talk or share with one another and that kind of stuff. And they were committed to that, not the relationship. And the other person was committed to the relationship, although the other person had problems just like this other one. But this one wanted the relationship to work and voiced it. The other one wanted the relationship to work, but they were committed more to the tussling part of it than it was the relationship. So the person who was committed to struggling and the power struggle and going back and forth, they unknowingly kept sabotaging their love. And they would often sabotage the love in their relationships, not just with their person they were in love with, but with friends and everything, when pain got unbearable. They couldn't hold back. Now, the interesting thing was that the children of this relationship, they knew who the culprit was. They knew who the conspirator was, the one who was ultimately, if that person had humbled themselves, that the relationship would be much stronger. They knew this, but they were afraid to talk and share it because in their home, there was a level of retribution that would take place, meaning they would get it back if they spoke up, because they would be accused of choosing a side. And if they were not accused of choosing a side, they would be treated like they chose a side. And so also because this other person in their relationship, because their parent was the one who did nice things for them as well, they didn't want to lose out. But at the same time, the couple wanted to get it right. Say, we want to get it right. Now, that's the situation with many of us where we're in a relationship where we want to get it right. And I'm going to submit to you today that when you want to get something right, something else is going to have to be let go. When you want to get something right, you have to focus all of your attention on getting right, as opposed to getting right and also doing this. One of the partners became completely dedicated. They took classes on relationships, and they knew that they were able to understand, and you got to understand this how it was. One of them was spiritual. One of them, they were both spiritual at times, but one of them got so tired of going through what they were going through, they dedicated to learning, and this when they found out that they were in a struggle. And this was just a part of the relationship. And that person who was committed to restoring the relationship, and let me just give this to you. When you're in a relationship, it can become such a delicate balance that literally you can hear the voice to say, what's the sense of trying? Or I've already done that, or we've already been here, I've experienced that. And the question is that true? See, most of us know how to make love, we know how to get in love, we know how to buy love, supposedly, but we don't know how to be in love. And so what happened was, the one person understood that when trouble came, and this was a new challenge for them, when trouble came into the relationship and it was an argument, that it wasn't negative, but they could transform their relationship, and the chemistry was being given to that relationship. Now, they both quoted the same scriptures, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, then and only then can you test and improve God's true and perfect will. They both knew that. But one of them was still conformed to the world. So here you got one that's committed to God, the other one's committed to God, but they're also committed to the world. Now, how can that be? How can you be committed to God and committed to the world? Well, remember in Revelations, he says, you either be hot or you're cold, but he doesn't want you to be lukewarm or he'll spit you out. Well, one of the partners in the relationship was lukewarm. When God sufficed, they showed that character of God. When he was not advantageous, they wouldn't show the character of God. And so it was anything goes. Well, the partner who was committed to the drama knew, I want to change, and they took a lot of notes, and the second note they took to help them with their situation was this, and they had to remind themselves, what we need to do in this relationship is not in conflict. That's never going to go away. But what we're going to have to do is get rid of the way we're hurting each other, the injuries that we're causing. We have to get rid of this. And they were committed to that. And when they say injuries we're causing, they weren't necessarily looking about the injuries, dealing with the injuries that was caused to them, but the things that they knew that they were causing. See, when you are in a relationship, you're in a business, you're in a ministry, or whatever it is, there comes a point where you have to begin to take on responsibility for your contribution to the failure or the success of that entity. And although most people had given up on them, they knew that what they had was much more than others could see. But the daunting task that faced their lover or the person that they were with, that they were in love with, and they knew the person truly loved them, but the person that truly loved them, who was committed to God and also to the world, had issues. And these issues were ruining their relationship. But while the issues are ruining their relationship, while these issues were ruining their relationship, they couldn't see it. Because this is just who they were. And because they were often more assertive at times and were often right in other areas of their life, when it came to love, they thought that they were good. They thought they were cool. And they suffered from what, and I coined this, parental temper tantrum, PTT. And that is when the child grows up, and when they grow up, they're upset about something that has taken place in childhood, and their life becomes about constant temper tantrums, but it's a result of what has happened in the parental relationship. And so now, when you have PPT or PTT, parental temper tantrum syndrome, or PTTS, as an adult, your emotions and your reactions are always over the top. I'm making this up. I don't know if they make that other stuff up, but this is what I've learned this is not from no book or nothing. This is what I'm telling you. Your reactions are over the top. The words you use are over the top. And so as these reactions and the words you use always serve to get what you want. And they vow, when you have this syndrome and you've grown up in a chaotic environment, or a hood environment, or a suburban hood environment, you have this mentality that says, I will never, ever be prey again, meaning Prey. I will never be subject to the abuse of authority on my soul. Which brings us to our first clip, Tasha Mack, Coffee House. Let's watch this again.
Girl, obviously I got on my invisible suit. You know, the one that only come in black. Let me get off this phone and be seen. Excuse you.
What?
You know what? You just jumped in front of me.
Lady, I'm ready to order. You were just looking at the menu.
Just because I'm looking at the menu don't mean you could just wobble your in front of me.
What's going on? Lady, let it go. You were talking on the phone. Moroccan mint latte?
Oh, no, I ain't gonna let it go. And why are you taking his order? I was here first.
Please, ma'am. I'm just trying to save up enough to get a bus pass.
Can you believe these people treat me this way?
Tasha, calm down. Does it really matter if you get your coffee 30 seconds later?
Yes, it does. I'm spending money in here just like he is, and I deserve some respect. And if you give him that latte before I get mine, I'm gonna set it off up in here.
I'm gonna call the manager.
Allow me. Manager! How they just gonna ban us? How you gonna let them ban us? Why you didn't do anything?
I did. I told you to calm your down.
Why me? Why I always gotta calm down?
So everything doesn't end in bloodshed. Tasha, I'm 42 years old. I work 18 hours a day, most of which is spent fighting football players. I'm not trying to have that in my relationship.
A fight is what started this relationship.
Keep it up, a fight's how it's going to end.
Now, what now?
Tasha, I'm serious. Last week you went off at the gas station. The week before that you went off at the church. I've been a Baptist 30 years. Now I'm forced to be Episcopalian.
Okay, so you just gonna take the pastor side.
Tasha, look, when we meet my friends tomorrow night, let's just skip the drama, okay? I want them to meet the Tasha that I fell in love with. The sexy, beautiful, smart Tasha.
Now, how many of the Tasha do you know?
Well, there's the, I don't take no mess Tasha, the all no Tasha. And, oh yeah, everybody's favorite. Now what now, Tasha?
Okay, well, don't forget that I rocked your world last night, Tasha.
I appreciate that, but I'm outside of the bedroom. I need peace. I need silence.
I'm soft. I'm peaceful. And I'm sorry, Kenny. I didn't know it was an issue.
Seriously, guys. My manager said 10 feet.
Hey.
Go to the next part.
Hey, Tasha, calm down.
No, I don't need to calm down, Kenny. You and I both know this is some whiteness. Look, Mike, you may have 2 PhDs, but you ain't got no manners. And all y'all ain't nothing but a bunch of swingers. Your meatless sandwiches and your useless therapy. I can save all y'all some money. You don't need counseling. You need to hold hands and jump.
Hey, Tasha.
Look, if you think bringing me a gift and begging me for my forgiveness is gonna work, then you right. Baby, I already have one exactly like this. You bought it for me, remember? So this is my stuff.
I'm sorry, Tasha. I don't think I can do this anymore.
What? It's because of last night? You saying that was my fault?
No, it doesn't matter whose fault it is. I don't think we're right for each other.
Why? Because I'm not white?
Here we go.
That's right. And I wish you would go there with me, Kenny, and stop pretending that the world isn't brave.
Tasha, this isn't a black and white issue. This is about me and you.
So now it's about me and you.
Right. Yes, it's about me
Okay, well
and
then
you.
where were you last night when I needed you?
What?
It was just like the coffee shop. You were never there to defend me.
You don't need defending, Tasha. You need anger management. So Mike gave you grief about a word. So what? He does that to everybody. Sometimes he's an ass. But when I was going through my divorce, he was right there for me. With his dictionary. Look, I got a million Mike stories. We could have shared them later in bed, but no, you got that shoot first mentality. Do you remember how you talked to him? You remember how you talked to him? I gotta go back now and deal with that.
Kenny, if somebody says something to me that I don't like, I gotta let them know.
Exactly. That's what you do. You do that all the time. I'm not gonna change who you are. I can't change who you are.
I'm not asking you to change me, Kenny.
I can't do it anyway. That's why I'm here. I'm not here to talk about it. I'm not even here to fight. I'm through fighting, okay? I told you. I laid it out to you as best I could. I'm through fighting. I'm done. I'm done.
So that's it? That's it?
Yeah. I really wish things could have been different.
This is what has happened in my relationships, in our relationships. And you see there is something that happens, especially with those who have that type A personality or that shoot first, ask questions later personality. And that is, this emotion is over the top. And if you notice how Tasha Mack said it, she said, if I see something, she says, you know, I'm going to have to say something. I just can't let anything slide. Well, in this couple's life that I've been talking about, the committed partner had to have empathy. If you are with a strong personality person that you're in love with, you have to understand that oftentimes that energy that they're giving to you is not an energy that they themselves want to give to you, but it's an energy that is learned. And you have to have the empathy. For me, I had to begin to recognize when I was having conversations with my wife, whether she admitted it or not, having an alcoholic father, having an absentee mother, and having to raise herself in a whole lot of ways affected her personality. It affected who she was. So she could be very sweet, but then she could cross over into something, and it was just something that was ugly. And me too, but for the purposes of what I'm talking about, I had to begin to have empathy. And I'm sure she would think, well, I really had to have empathy on you. But I was like one of those people who too was committed to the relationship. So now, they both knew that they had rough past because they had shared with one of them. With each other. One of them knew that they had lost their voice because their parent constantly cut them off and never let them speak. The other could not understand why their partner's assertive nature rubbed them the wrong way. And so, say for instance, if this is to enter, I have this tube representing the tunnel. To enter this tunnel, when they were younger, and a conversation was going to take place, and we call this tunnel the dark tunnel, the tunnel of chaos, or whatever you want to call it, that if you're going to have an authentic relationship, you've got to be willing to go through that tunnel. And I call it the dark tunnel because it's an icky space. Well, whenever they had conversations, something happened as children or as teens that caused them not to want to have that conversation. Secondly, the other person loved their partner for who they were, but their partner was so assertive in the relationship, it often rubbed them the wrong way. But they knew enough to know that their parents had injured their soul once again by asserting their opinions and their dominance and their control. Now, both of them had learned the art of verbal war, and that is the ability to speak words in such a way to incite you to respond. And so their conversations, when it got heated, was no holds bars at that time. And then it got to a point, and just because, then it got to a point that would only happen every 3 months and 6 months, but even still, it didn't need to happen anymore where you have this big down, knockdown, drag out argument. And everybody goes to their corner, you move back to your mother's house or whatever the case may be. So the committed partner decided, I'm going to convert this energy that we're having into personal transformation and change. And that this culture had messed them up. And one night they had a dream. And in the dream, they heard wisdom whisper to them, the tunnel is not the tunnel, the dark tunnel of conversation, the dark tunnel that you have avoided in terms of talking. Because remember, he set the precedent earlier that in order to have a love relationship, you have to be able to communicate. You can't have love without being able to communicate that love effectively to one another outside of the bedroom, as we saw in that clip. So when they had a dream, wisdom whispered to them, and wisdom said this, Healing starts in the tunnel and not until then. So unless you have this conversation, unless you become willing to have the conversations that you've avoided, then you're not going to be healed. And in this dream, he saw, or they saw, because they saw a trigger, and a gun with a trigger, and it had a red trigger. And wisdom said it's not the trigger that's causing the problem in your relationship, the triggers that are making you go off. And that's when they realized it wasn't the triggers, but it was something else more sinister and yet more simpler to deal with had they understood it. Let's play the animal video, please.
Goats, the earliest known domesticated farm animal. Today there are more than 400 million of them worldwide. Then there's this little guy. He doesn't get the attention of, say, the more fashionable Angora goat. He's a fainting goat, and he's got a different talent. Lisa Johnson breeds goats in Florida.
These goats are called myotonic goats. Many people call them fainting goats, wooden leg goats, stiff leg goats, nervous goats, the Tennessee goats, Tennessee meat goats. So they just have all kinds of nicknames for them. They carry the hereditary gene for myotonia congenita. What happens is that when the goat is startled or excited, it causes a very temporary stiffening of the muscles. And when the muscles relax, after a few seconds, the goat jumps up and runs on its way.
They don't call them fainting goats for nothing.
It can even be something as simple as being excited over being fed. The adult animals typically they keep their balance better, and what they will end up doing is pretty much bracing on four legs.
In this dream, he sees these goats, and these goats are freezing. And that's when he begins to understand that that's what he, as a human being, learned to do whenever they were faced with a conversation that dealt with having to bare their soul or be vulnerable, and that they would freeze. Many of us know about flight and response when it comes to danger, but what we don't understand is the freezing of the impala when the predator locks onto him. Say a lion or something can grab an impala's leg, and yes, it hurts, but the impala will instinctively freeze. And when they freeze because their system is shutting down to protect themselves. Well, there are some of us, when it comes to having a conversation and going through this tunnel, we do what? Freeze. Y'all with me, right? We freeze. And the reason we freeze is it's not hereditary, but it's conditioned within us. Nobody moves, nobody gets what? Hurt. Nobody talks, nobody gets heard. And so the law in our mind becomes, when it comes time to having a conversation, we need to be very careful. And believe it or not, this is culture. Most black people don't want to talk to each other. Most, as people in general, but now I find out in relationships, there are a lot of sisters who have relationships with men, but they don't know how to talk in the relationship, because what a male man is going to do is point out something that you haven't paid attention to. On the opposite end, women can do that all day to men. But when a man points out where you have missed it, the conversation shuts down, or whatever the case, and I don't know what it is, and maybe you could explain it to me by way of email, but I don't know what it is. But women have, when you give them a correction, whoa, be prepared. And sometimes they'll hear it, but most of the times they won't. So now, this goes with most of us, and it's generational. I know for myself, this lesson and what I'm talking about is born out of, there were a couple of times I was supposed to have a conversation and I froze. I'm talking about in the last 3-4 years. I froze and didn't have that conversation. Didn't want to have that conversation because I was afraid of what would take place. Am I making sense to y'all, ATL? Marilyn, are you hearing me? Wave your hands. I want to make sure y'all listen to me. I see Nerosha. Amen. All right, let's keep going. So now, say this. And the voice told the person, trauma does not have to be a life sentence. Say it. And that means that, and I've given my life to this, but now I have redoubled my efforts, because one of the things was happening was I look at some of the plays that I've done. I've gone back and looked at some of the plays and all the different things that I've done. And I realized that before I did the play, I spent 2 weeks back and forth with people trying to help this person do this and do that and do this and do that. And God began to show me, Deron, some of this stuff you're doing to help is because of trauma in your own life. And you're reaching out to try to help somebody else as if you could prevent it. But now, the only way to actually understand your trauma is to go home.
All right, Mama, now. Don't go in here talking about my financial situation to nobody now. Look, y'all don't want to be in here too long.
Okay, look, I don't want to either. Okay, we're going to get in, get out.
Cool. I'm going to get back and get some rest for my library dedication tomorrow. And where's the library? The irony of this event.
Yeah, look what the cat drug in. Oh, my famous grandma.
Miss your grandma, Mack.
Hey, T.T.
Joey.
Oh, good. Mama. Oh, Tasha.
Hey, welcome home, y'all.
What's up, Luke?
Why don't you get in here and give your people some love?
You all saw on that. She goes home, that's her mother, and her mother throws her shade. When you grow up in a situation in a home and you love your mother, but when you grow up in this situation, and this couple, one of the people had grown up in a situation where their mother used people around to embarrass them. And what the mother's goal is, even as an adult, was to keep Tasha silent. And so it was calculated when she came out the door. I'm going to speak to them, I'm going to speak to you, and I'm going to say, look what the cat dragged in or whatever. Now, you got to take yourself back to, if the mother is doing that as an adult, then what was happening during growth? Let's go to the next video.
Mama, I told you not to create such a ruckus. Ain't nobody thinking about you. It's for my famous grandbaby.
God, hey, y'all, all these people showed up for me.
It's all you, Malik. I don't even got nothing to do with the slamming ribs Grammy Mack be making.
Oh, thank you, Terrence. See, Tosh, a genuine food service professional just said he likes my cooking. You know, Terrence, I was talking to your mother just the other day. I said to her, Terrence should have his own show on the Food Network after the Neelys. Because that woman, she can't cook her way out of a baggie.
No, right? Thank you. How my mom doing?
Oh, she's good. She good.
Tell her call.
All right.
You know her sauce is store-bought, right?
Now, what now?
Nothing, ma'am.
Speaking of sauce, where is that fine-ass Rick Fox? Y'all know that Tasha ran off that fine-ass Rick Fox, don't you? I ain't even met him.
Mama, please, can we start a new conversation? We've been on this one for what, 3 years now?
2 years, 7 months, and 3 days. He was on Dancing with the Stars longer than he was with you. Can you believe y'all? Tasha done ran off that fine Rick Fox. Woo!
Remember, we've been talking about the sociopath. And we said that's a sociopathic personality who they're not concerned about who they hurt in the process of them talking. And so she wasn't concerned necessarily about hurting her daughter. She is more concerned about being in that moment and shining. So if you look at it, one of Tasha Mack's favorite saying is, I'm about that life. Well, we now see her mother's about that life too. And that life in the black community is a false life of energy, as if you've accomplished something, but it's more taught than it is character. And so the mother is getting her shine on at the expense of T-Mac. But now you're beginning to see now T-Mac, like this couple, jumps to conclusions, not to conversations.
Like I always say, Pooh, parents are always better with a tequila chaser.
Just like old times.
Yeah, except you ain't pregnant and you ain't in prison.
You know what, Mama?
You know, Tasha.
No, I'm sorry. Enough is enough. Mama, it's been 27 years. When you gonna get over the fact that I had a baby at 15?
Oh, and don't forget he was out of wedlock.
You know what? I am so sick and tired of this, Mama.
No, I'm gonna go get some pie.
Let me tell you something, little girl. Just because you live in some highfalutin hotel with servants waiting on your hand and foot don't mean you can come up in here and act like you're the Queen of Sheba. So don't you ever forget to show your respects when you come up in my house.
Which I paid for and remodeled.
With my grandbaby's money.
Who I gave birth to.
And 15!
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry that I got pregnant before all your girlfriends' daughters got pregnant, okay? And I'm sorry I didn't break the chain of teenage pregnancy in our family. And I'm sorry that what I became, it ain't enough for you. But I respect you, Mama. I just wish you did the same for me.
Let's really understand Tasha Mack. We see her, she's about that life, she's about the bling, she can't keep a relationship with a man, she can't talk, she don't know how to share feelings, she be lying, she's back and forth. What's happening with her? This is showing that she's carrying energy that never got to get just discharged. It never got to get completed. And so we can see that her mother is still holding some things over her. But what I want to give to you is that when you were growing up, and this is not an indictment on mothers. Do y'all get that? This is just the way it is at times. Her mom is holding on to something, and you hear Tasha Mack saying, and the person who wrote this character basically is saying, will I ever be good in your sight? Will I ever measure up to you? Because what happens with Tasha Mack, what she fails to understand, that as an adult, she's trying to live up to something that she never got to live up to in her own home. Is this making sense to y'all? And so now her energy, when she decides she's never going to be a prey again, P-R-E-Y, and she's not going to be prey again, what she's saying is, I'm no longer tolerating being disrespected. I'm no longer tolerating being talked to. So now, let me take you what I wanted to take you to. And I'm going to continue to do these things. And these next things that I'm going to talk about, I said something on Wednesday, and I know it was a spirit, and I said there are 5 conversations I had to have. And if you are going to, how many of you all want God to bless you? Raise your hand. High in Atlanta, because one brother sitting in the second row didn't raise his hand. Let's do it in Maryland. How many of you all want God to bless you and bless the desires of your heart? I have some desires in my heart when it comes to plays, when it comes to outreach, when it comes to all these different things. And I wanted God to bless me. But God pretty much showed me that, like Tasha Mack, you can have all the trappings, which I call the box. I put my faith in the box. I put my faith in the aesthetics. I put my faith in the knowledge that I had to bring about certain things, but my faith was not completely in a relationship with the Spirit. and with God like it should have been. And so when I said 5 conversations that night and the next morning, I said, God, well, tell me, why would I say there's 5 conversations you have to have, and I don't even know what they are? But I know I had 5, and so I sat down. The first one is attachment distraction. And that detachment distraction conversation is one where you come to an understanding. Let me use my relationship with God. I was so distracted on what I wanted to accomplish, I didn't have time to be with him. Attachment distraction means there are things within our lives that we are attached to, and we can't move further and do what the God is telling us to do because we're attached either to people, belief system, or a person, or a way, a behavior of doing something. And this attachment to these things, false beliefs, many of them are, causes you to be distracted from your own life. So I'll submit to you that a lot of the drama that's in your life is because you have not had this attachment distraction conversation in such a way with your soul to be able to say, what is it in me that I'm attached to that is also causing me to actually avoid life, and I'm giving more energy to this than I am to my own life, my own children, my own dreams, or what it is, or just life in period, in general. Are y'all getting that? And so when you have your attachments equal yourself, who you think you are. And so when it comes to love and war and having a conversation, it's going to be war if you maintain your attachments to your belief system. This is where I challenge both brothers and sisters, because there's some of us, we have such a stubbornness to say, this is who I am and this is who I'm going to be. Therefore, our partners don't want to have a conversation. They don't want to go into the tunnel with us because they know when the conversation starts, it's going to start off with these same issues because the person doesn't move from that. If you can't say amen, say ouch. Because there's some of us that can't have a relationship because we're not going to move off of something. Well, there were things that I wanted to do, and God basically said, I'm not opening any more doors right now, Duran, until you deal with these attachments to people on your phone, these attachments to these different things. The second conversation is apology validation of the wrong. The apology validation statement conversation. And what is that? That's the conversation. And sisters, if you truly want to be with a man, you need to get this. You got to get this. If not, your relationships are never going to be authentic. Men, you have to get this. If you really want a relationship with a man, or men, if you want a relationship with a woman, and you want your relation, if you want harmony with your son and the mother and the daughter and the father and the son and whatever relationship you're in, you have to commit to having the apology validation conversation, or the apology validation of the wronged conversation. And what does that mean? That means you initiate conversations, meaning you initiate the unspoken that you don't talk about, that you know is going to cause problems, or it has caused problems in the past. All of us have issues that we don't like to talk about. But in this one, you initiate the conversation. And what that means is you can no longer be afraid not to talk. You can no longer be afraid to talk about what you know is going to bring an argument. But now, when you initiate this, you come at this conversation from a whole nother perspective than what you're used to. Y'all get it? And the way you come at this conversation is that you go into the conversation to tell them where they're right and how right they have been about their assessment of you. Now that's hard as all get out. Without expectations of them coming back to you, without expectations of them telling you, well, I'm sorry here. You go in with a mindset that says, I want harmony in this relationship, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share where they're correct. I'm going to apologize for my behavior, and I'm going to validate what they said about me. Are y'all listening? And I don't care. I'm not concerned about pain, because my ultimate goal is to close the gap, not widen it. And so, but what happens when you're like Tasha Mack, and I get it, you done been hurt, you done been talked about, you done went through some stuff, things have happened, you don't want to get into that, but I'm here to tell you, no relationship happens without this conversation. And you often, and you go into that conversation knowing that I'm possibly going to feel bad. Hello? I think I'm saying some good stuff here. So, the purpose of this, and I learned this because at this point, my wife does not want to have a conversation with me at this point. I'm talking about whenever I was learning this stuff. Because she knows I'm going to kirk out, she going to kirk out, this is going to happen, or that's going to happen, or she's just simply tired. So the stronger person who's committed to love says, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have the conversation. And when I have the conversation, my goal is to let them know by modeling, I'm bringing love back into this space. Man, let me explain something to you. Once the woman has been wrong and she's pissed off, ain't nothing you can do with words. Hello? You must demonstrate with your behavior and your actions the words that you said. And you must demonstrate it on a very, very, very consistent basis. Or their hands, and you're not doing this on purpose, but their arms will be folded like Nikki and legs crossed and say, I'm waiting. Oh, look at Nikki right there. I'm waiting for you to get this together. Are y'all following me? Because a woman says, I'm only going to let you hurt me, but so many times. Because it takes a lot to keep coming back from that. So as the person, which I am the one that was supposed to, I took point, you now have to have that conversation and walk away with her not saying anything if need be. Because the first few times they're shocked that you would even share that. And you also go in knowing that the person that you're going to share this with going to have some stuff to say that's going to upset you. But you tell yourself, even within that, it's not important for me to prove my point. What's important for them is to understand I love them. And they were right about me in this area. And this is what I'm going to do for this day on. And then at that point, now they're watching to see if you're going to keep your word. And what you do is you just keep your word. And I would say it like this. I'm going to make a few mistakes, but I'm going to keep my word. We're going to work this out. Equilibrium number 3, a woman's sense of self is defined through her ability, or defined through her feelings, and her sense of self defined through her feelings and the quality of her relationship. If her feelings and the quality of her relationships are not intact, she feels out of whack. And so Men, you have to make it important. Now, I'm not talking about the drama basket case that's just upset with everything. But even that, you have to let them know, you know what? I validate what you feel. I understand. And you ain't even got to tell them, I don't think it's right. Can I give you, I'm going to give you one more, two more, and then I'll pick it up on Wednesday. Is that okay? Third conversation is the friends and family conversation. This is the third conversation, friends and family. Your friends and family conversation is a boundary conversation. This is where you first determine within yourself that this behavior in my presence is unacceptable. Hello? We all have friends and family who take us there, or they don't respect your boundaries. This is where you begin to say, I love you, but this right here that we get into, this is unacceptable. And you have to be willing to handle the consequences, because, say this, each one of these conversations is going to piss somebody off. Namely me. Say that. But I've learned it ain't about being right. It's about bringing the love into the relationship. And so, friend, if we can't talk and be straight with each other, then we don't have a friendship. If we can't be revealing to each other and there be an even exchange of apology and truth where you own up to your stuff and you don't make ugly pretty, then we can have that relationship. And then sometimes with your family members, you have to be able to make the decision, I respect you, but that doesn't mean I have to be in your presence if what you're going to do is constantly bring me down. Are y'all with me? Now, you end up being called the troublemaker or the scapegoat, but in this conversation, you don't care because you realize that it's keeping you from living. The next conversation is me, myself, and I. That's where you have to sit down and talk to yourself and be honest with yourself, the lies that you have been walking in. Hello? The convenient lies that you have been walking in, the truths that you have not faced yourself, that you know God in this awesome universe has revealed to you. We said we want God to bless, right? We now know that God cannot bless if we are not willing to be honest with ourselves. Am I correct? And so I had to have the conversation, and that was, Duran, you want power in your life, but you're not appropriating the power in your life in the areas where you ain't even had no situation. You're not applying yourself. So for me, because you all constantly know my weight was 365, I don't know what it is. I try not to get on the scale now, but until exercising became who I am, and I'm still trying to get there, but until it became who I am, then God says, you keep asking me for this, this, and this. But I told you I can't do it with a temple that's not in the best condition. And the stresses that you are under, I must now crash this so that you can focus on you. Because you're the project, you're the product. And so that's the question where I had to be truthful. I also had me, myself, and I is to be truthful, because the validation, I go back to the apology, the validation is that, or even if it's me, myself, and I, my wife said, this house is your place. Be honest, Duran. Are you treating the house, her house, which you get to live in, as your place? And y'all know the answer was what? No. I had to have that conversation. I had to validate. When you have wronged someone and they have lost trust in your words, you have to spend the time letting them know what you said was correct. And can I tell you, you may have to have each one of these conversations. There are 5 conversations, but each one you may have to have 15 times. But guess what? When you have them, you always go in knowing, God, you're going to work this out. Number 5, the center and still conversation with your Creator. The center and still conversation. And that is the conversation with God where you begin to center your life and you become still. What you're attempting to do is reduce the noise that's in your spirit. And that means that you have to now spend time in prayer and meditation. Tony, because you've been here since Capitol Plaza, you watch me go through transformation after transformation after transformation. I'm telling you, I'm blessed when I look and I see y'all faces from Maryland and see that you all are still worshiping God and doing what you have to do. And I know these are the summer months and people are on vacation and things of that nature. But Tony, I'm going to tell you this. I had to have this conversation because your life was no longer important to me. Tasha, right? Tasha was no longer important to me. You can be so distracted with what ain't life that when it's time to pull on what is life, it can't motivate you because you done gave all your energy to something that didn't mean anything. And then you go to look at a Sasha and you, Olympia, you go to look and you don't feel connected anymore because you bought that life. And that life is the energy of the African-American male or female who's pretending that they're somebody, but they've never built their character. That's what that life is. That life is making a difference up with material stuff. And that's the problem of the black woman. She done made some funds and did some things, and she bought that life, but she can't be. Skills on your job don't translate into skills in a relationship. And just because you can bring that money in, you need to do better by being able to bring the conversation in. Once you model these things, and when I said, let me go back to the center and still. So Tony, what I had to now do is I had to go back to my first love, which was God. And I said, no gas stuff, nothing else until I am back to a man that was excited to watch y'all walk down the aisle and knew that this is what my life is for. Today, Sasha, Olympia, I am connected to where you are. And every part of your journey in terms of in the spirit realm, and my soul leaps for every one of you all that I see here, even as you remain faithful in what could be titled as a very tough time. But here's what I know about God. When you have these 5 conversations and you're willing to be vulnerable in each one of them, he will return you back to a semblance of peace. And the voices will still try to rob you, but you will have so much peace. And I want to submit to you all, after having these conversations, there's peace. Circumstances ain't changed, but internally, they changed. For those of you who I'm telling you, male and female, love is the only thing you need to keep things going. And I'm here to tell you, you can now have conversations that you normally cause problems. Last story. In the book Thick Face, Black Heart, there's a story told of a warrior. And he was a samurai warrior. And he was so good at every town he went to, he got challenged by somebody because somebody wanted to beat him. And he would beat people. I mean, he was undefeated. He came into this one town, and this person decided, I'm going to challenge you to a sword battle. And the guy said, I don't want to fight you. And the guy said, who challenged him, said, the only way you're going to get past me is either fight me or you're going to have to crawl past me. Now remember, this man doesn't beat everybody. So he sheathed his sword. And he crawled past the man. Now, the crowd was in astonishment. They couldn't believe that this champion would crawl like that. And the people started talking about him. You gave up. You did this. Why didn't you fight him? And he said he was not a worthy opponent. He was not worth my energy and my expertise. And I'd rather humble myself. I'm telling you, if you're going to get your relationships right, the only way to have true conversations is to constantly be humbled. Come here, you. Yes, you. Come here for a second. Just want you to stand right there. Stand right there beside me, face down. The only way to have a conversation, if you represent Jill, is for her to constantly see me in this position. I'm good. I ain't got to woof. I ain't got to do whatever. And I don't have to raise up. I don't have to get swole up. I don't have to do anything. Because ultimately, what I'm trying to do is to get us to walk together through this mess. Amen. God bless you. I don't know if Jill is in service. I'd like to turn it over.
When he ended, you saw him sitting down, and he said the only way that we can move forward, something like that, right? If I constantly see him in that position. If you're a man or a woman, I'm gonna give you a piece of something, and if you do this, if you bring this back into your space, it's going to make the biggest difference in the world. Because the Ron sitting in a low position will not change, is not enough. And I'm going to show you why. This would, Song of Songs, I'm going to read 2 scriptures from there so I can make this point. Verse 2, and Song of Songs, chapter 2, and chapter 2, verse 3. This is what it says. So in this particular scripture, there's a woman that talks, and then there's a man that talks. She talks, and then her lover talks, okay? 2 is she talking. She said, and he's talking about her. He said, like a lily among thorns. This is the man talking. Like a lily among thorns is my darling among maidens. What he's saying to her is, you're the only one I want. See, I don't care if the Ron sits there and act humble. If you can't
if you sit and look humble, and I think that when I'm in this room, I ain't no different than any other woman in this room, that ain't going to matter to me. It's not going to matter to me. What matters to me, listen, this is the love song that Solomon wrote. He said, when I'm in the room with you, baby, you're the only flower in that room. You want to know, no matter what you seem to do, why it's not enough? Because you ain't made me sure that I'm the only flower in the room full of women. That's your job. That's why you got to not be looking at Beyonce with your wife. I'm trying to tell you why she can't come out. See, when Deron talk about going all the way back, you know why he can do all that, get all off, get back on, and we still be in place? Because Deron has always made me feel like the flower in the room. He's never had to recover that. He had to fix up and make up a lot of stuff, but he did not have to bring me back from that. All right. Psalm 2:3. Like an apple tree. Now this is a woman talking about her man. Like an apple tree among the trees of the forest is my lover among the young men. He said, you the only tree with fruit on. These old dried up trees, I don't want none of them. When is the last time you said that? No, you can't show me love. God so loved the world, he made sure you knew you mattered. I so loved the world that I gave my son. The problem with our community is when we were coming up, no one made us matter. So we're spending our time trying to get someone to say that we matter. When the earth was formed in the beginning, it was empty, it was void. And what we do is we create that void, because every time I come to you and you got a whole bunch of things to say, but I'm not sure that when I get in that tunnel, if I have a conversation with you, that you either not going to come home or you're going to go downstairs and not talk to me for 2 days. Then I don't care what you do. I don't care how low you sit, lay on the floor in your birthday suit. If your way of dealing with me is to leave me while you're in the house, I'm not going through that tunnel the way I can go through that tunnel, because you got to make me feel safe. And the only way, Joe, you can make Asia feel safe is for Asia to know that you desire her. We got to stop playing with it. She got to know you desire, and she's got to know she's the only flower in your room. The only flower, not Beyonce. Stop it. You make her insecure. I'll tell you what else he said, because I want to make sure I get the woman side in there, because Deron did a great job. Song 7:10. I belong to my lover, and his desire is for me. You want to know what a woman wants? She wants to know that she is your desire, not your clothes, not your car, not your kids. Because they will leave. Listen, Talita came to me when she was younger. I think you love Deron more than you love me. First, I sang an old song. If you don't know me by now, you may not ever know me. But then I realized she wasn't but 12. Because I figured I showed you all the love I know how to show you. But this is what I said to a 12-year-old. I said, Lee, let me explain something to you. One day, you're going to grow up and you're going to leave home. And I want you to leave home. So what you want me to do is be by myself. I said, let me tell you what you're asking me. Because he's not doing anything to her. She was just used to being the two of us. And I said, let me tell you what life is like. You're going to grow up. You're going to have children. Already happening. You know, all is going to happen. And then it's going to be me. So what you're asking me to do for you, because you got a future. You on the front end of something, I'm on the back end. So, listen. This ain't bad enough for me to give her my boo. I know you feel like this, but conversation conversation. I had to go through the dark tunnel. Had a conversation. God, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because I know you are with me. And if you don't go through that shadow, that tunnel, believing that God is with you because you keep trying to go on your own, you're going to collapse in the middle of that tunnel. I don't go through that tunnel for the run. I go through the tunnel because the other side of that tunnel is my path. If I die in the tunnel, I never get back on my path. I taught 8 o'clock, so get the tape and you'll hear the whole message. Proverbs 4:19. I'm slowing down now. Listen, the path of the righteous is like the first gleam of dawn, shining ever brighter till the full light of day. But the way, the habit of the wicked, not evil, wicked. Wicked means, think of it as crooked. You haven't quite, it's not clear yet. So you're on a path, you're on a wicked path, because 1 minute you're here, the next minute there, then you're on your path, then something happened and you off. You see that? You zigzag. So the path of the zigzag is darkness. You can't see, you can't tell where you're going. But he said this, because they do not know what makes them stumble. If you would just discover what makes you stumble, you know what you discover, how you discover that? You go through that tunnel. That's how you know what your weaknesses are. Don't be afraid of your weaknesses. Listen, they are the light to your path. Because once you know what makes you stumble, you know how to carry yourself. See, the wicked have a way, not a path, a habit. You got a habit that you can't break because it seems right to you, but there's a way that seems right to a man that in the end leads to death. And there's a lot of things we've done that seem right. And then we woke up one day and our head was clear and we realized this ain't working. This ain't working. And you got to be able to get on your path when you find out that when you discover that you thought you was on the path, now you realize this ain't my path. This path my mother put me on, blah, blah, blah. Got to get back to your path. That's why you got to go through the tunnel. Because that other light, that is your space. But what am I saying to us black people? Mostly black people. People want to know that they matter. Am I your flower? And the only flower in the room. And don't tell me you get to look and do what you do with whoever's on television because they're only on television. That doesn't matter to me. You know how many women I talked to and said I would talk to my husband, but if I go talk to him about how much attention he's giving this person, he's going to think I'm jealous. I said, who cares what he thinks? But she did care what he thinks and what he thought. So you want to heal us? You want us to call you the only apple in our garden amongst these dried up trees? Tell me I'm your flower. And all those other mistakes, you can grow up. You can fix that, but what you cannot fix is not remembering that I'm the only one in this room that should matter to you. I'm the only one. Because I'm the one you want to spend the rest of your life with. All that other stuff can go away. You're fighting for the wrong stuff. We all want to know that we matter. So I don't know where you are in this room. Whether it's with your children or whether, let's just talk about your personal self. When a woman feels that she doesn't matter, she gives all her attention to her children. When a woman feels that she doesn't matter, she gets so far up into her son's marriage. Because now her son has to make her matter because her husband or her lover didn't cause her to matter. So now she got to find somebody who she's the only one to. Do you get that? I'm your only mother. Why do you think they say that? I'm your only mother. Listen, we ain't talking about whether you're my, but you're saying that, but you're trying to get treated like my only woman, and that's a problem. You're my only mother, but you're not my number one woman, and I don't want to tell you that, but as long as your wife knows that, as long as she knows that, you ain't going to get all the treasure that's really inside of a heart that God said in the garden, your desire will be for your husband. Your desire will be for that one that you're connected to like that. Why isn't that happening? Because first, it's your job to make sure she knows that she is your desire. Do you desire your wife today? And does she know that? Or has this become an opportunity to correct her and fix her, to shape her, and always let her know that something's wrong? Because how do I think that you think something's wrong? Because you think you got to fix me all the time. What about me is okay already? What about me is okay already? Tell me I'm the lily. Call me that. Got to be something right with me already. So I don't want to work no more. I don't want to work no more. I don't want to prove no more. I don't want to prove that I'm your desire. When I look undesirable, you tell me I'm your desire. I won't be 25 all my life. You won't be 30 all your life. She won't be 40 all her life. And she won't be able to keep up with the youngest that's coming up. So you make sure she ain't worried about that. That's your job. And God will deliver you what you've been praying about. So the one thing I can tell you about Deron Cloud, who used to use our stories to win the crowd. And I used to think I was tough enough to let him tell our stories a certain way, even though he embellished most of them. Finally, I said, wait a minute. Because I started feeling strange. You can't use our stories no more. Because you're making these folks think that we got another kind of relationship. I work too hard to please you for you to leave that impression with this crowd. So you tell them in here what you say to me at home. And that's why y'all think that I'm the best thing ever happening. So you can't have it. You want my heart? Make me your desire. You want her? You want his heart? Tell him. I don't want nobody but you. Love must be sincere. You can't act that. You can't act that. We'll know it. It has to be sincere. Don't come complimenting just for the sake of it. We'll know. Because you'll do something simple. Like start talking about somebody else. She's all up in my face, but I ain't want to. The fact that you're giving that much energy to it already told me it's too much for me. Because I'll come home and tell you who beat the horn at me. That will never benefit you. It will only make you wonder if, when it comes time to go through that tunnel and you got a hard thing to say, if I'm going to lose you to that thing you keep talking about at work that you don't want. Just don't want her. That's your work to do. That ain't my work to convince you of. Don't want her. And make it clear to yourself that you don't want it. It will become very clear to me. Love must be sincere. God so loved the world that he gave his only son. And he made you know, you matter to me. You matter so much that I gave my only son for you. That was the message. You matter to me.